There is a kind of man women will never truly love, and the most dangerous part is that he usually believes he's doing everything right. He shows up every time, he listens carefully, he commits fully, he gives more time, more attention, more emotional energy than anyone asked for. And instead of becoming more desired, he slowly becomes optional, replaceable, taken for granted. In the beginning, she seems appreciative. Then her energy changes. She grows distant, and eventually she walks away, often without a clear reason. This is where men unravel, because nothing feels more confusing than losing someone after giving what you believed was your absolute best. But what if the issue was never that you didn't give enough? What if the very behaviors you were taught would create love are the same behaviors quietly dissolving attraction? This isn't meant to comfort you. It's meant to reveal something about female psychology most men only understand after it's too late, and what truly separates the men women remain drawn to from the ones they slowly stop wanting. It's not easy to hear, but it's necessary. Women don't fall in love through moral logic or effort-based rules. They respond to a man's internal state, his emotional center, his self-command, his psychological position. And today, this isn't coming from another man speculating. It's coming from a woman saying what women rarely say openly. If you want clarity instead of comfort, stay with this. Not to hear what feels good, but to finally understand the game instead of being played by it. Most men grow up believing something that sounds reasonable, even honorable. If you love deeply enough, you'll be loved in return. If you're authentic, loyal, and consistent, that should be enough. That belief feels safe, and it's also where everything quietly begins to fall apart. Men approach love as acceptance. When a man loves, he loves the whole woman, her flaws, her past, her emotional swings, her bad days. His affection comes from recognition. This is who you are, and I choose you anyway. Women don't experience attraction in the same fixed way. A woman can feel connection, affection, even deep emotion, and still gradually lose desire if the man in front of her stops embodying the value that initially pulled her in. Her attraction isn't anchored to who you are as a static identity. It's a reaction to what you consistently project. That's where men get blindsided. They mistake emotional presence for lasting desire. They assume that because feelings once existed, they're guaranteed to remain. But female attraction is fluid. It responds to momentum, direction, and strength under pressure. When that momentum collapses, the feeling doesn't get protected. It gets replaced. This is why so many men say, "But she told me she loved me." And they're not lying. She probably did. But love for a woman isn't a permanent contract carved into stone. It's a state, and states change when the emotional environment changes. When a man loses his center, his edge, his independence, her emotional experience shifts right along with it. The most dangerous man in dating isn't the reckless or cruel one. It's the man who believes he's loved simply because he exists. Because when you believe love is guaranteed, you stop guarding the very traits that made it possible in the first place. When men hear the word strength, they often think of status, money, size, or influence. But that's not what holds a woman's attention once novelty fades. A woman doesn't bond to what you own. She responds to who you are when nothing is working in your favor. The kind of strength that matters is quieter and far more revealing. It shows up in how you regulate yourself emotionally, how clearly you think, and how complete your life feels on its own. Emotional control doesn't mean emotional shutdown. It means staying grounded when she's uncertain, reactive, or subtly testing the emotional atmosphere. When your mood doesn't depend on her approval, she feels something essential: safety. Mental clarity is just as important. A man who knows where he's going doesn't need constant reassurance that he's on the right path. He makes decisions without apology. He doesn't over-explain himself or argue his worth. His direction creates gravity, and then there's psychological self-sufficiency. A woman needs to sense that your life functions with or without her, that her presence is a choice, not a necessity. The moment she feels responsible for your emotional balance, desire begins to erode. Imagine two men facing the same pressure. One becomes reactive. He seeks reassurance. He explains himself endlessly. He tries to hold the connection together with words and effort. The other remains calm. He adjusts quietly and keeps moving forward without grasping. On paper, they might look identical. Emotionally, they register as completely different men. Women don't fall in love with promises or explanations. They fall in love with consistency under stress. They aren't listening for how much you say you care. They're observing how you carry yourself when things don't go your way. And this is the truth most men miss. A woman is never consciously asking, "How much does he love me?" She's asking, often without realizing it, when pressure hits, "Who is he?" Attraction almost never dies in a single dramatic moment. It fades quietly, long before phrases like "I'm confused" or "I just don't feel the same anymore" ever surface. This is where most men misread the situation. They assume something specific happened: a fight, a mistake, another man. But what actually occurred was far subtler. Something shifted beneath conscious awareness, a gradual subconscious devaluation. The man didn't suddenly become unlovable. He became predictable, emotionally dependent, and psychologically flat. And once that shift happens, no amount of extra effort can reverse it, because attraction was never about effort to begin with. It was about who you were being when no one was watching. It wasn't a moment where she sat down and decided to stop feeling what she once felt. Women don't wake up and choose to lose attraction. What happens is far quieter and far more automatic. Her mind simply recalibrates the value it assigns to the man in front of her based on what it observes over time. Patterns update perception. Repetition shapes meaning. And here's the part most men never see while it's happening. They are actively participating in that recalibration without realizing it. Every time you give from fear instead of abundance, something registers. Every time you silence yourself to keep the peace, something registers. Every time you tolerate behavior you don't respect because you're afraid of what happens if you don't, something registers. Not as patience, not as kindness, but as instability. The female nervous system is always scanning for strength and steadiness. When it senses that a man is afraid to lose her, it stops experiencing him as solid ground. Desire doesn't debate that signal. It follows it. This is why men say, with complete honesty, "I treated her better than anyone ever has," and still find themselves replaced. Because attraction is not a reward system for good behavior. It's a response to psychological position. The quickest way to weaken attraction isn't cruelty or neglect. It's proving through your behavior that you can't afford to lose her. Once that belief takes hold, everything you do gets filtered through it. Your attention starts to feel heavy instead of confident. Your affection feels calculated instead of natural. Your presence feels conditional instead of grounded. And the more you sense something slipping and try to fix it by giving more, explaining more, or holding tighter, the faster the devaluation deepens. Men are taught that time is the ultimate currency of love. If you give more of it, the bond should naturally grow stronger. More access, more closeness, more shared moments. On the surface, that logic sounds reasonable. Psychologically, it works in the opposite direction. To a woman, time that is too easily available doesn't feel like devotion. It feels like a lack of structure. When your time carries no weight, it loses meaning. And when it loses meaning, attraction fades without announcement. This is where the misunderstanding happens. A man thinks, "We're together more, so we're getting closer." A woman's nervous system reads something else entirely. If I can reach him anytime I want, his life must revolve around me. And that perception matters. Attraction depends on contrast, tension, and the sense that your presence is chosen, not automatic. When everything else in your life gets pushed aside for her, you don't look committed, you look collapsed. Men rarely notice when they do this. They cancel personal plans. They rearrange priorities. They slowly make her the center instead of a part. Not because they lack ambition, but because they're afraid that if they don't accommodate everything, she'll drift away. Ironically, that fear is exactly what causes the drift. Scarcity isn't about playing games, it's about integrity. A man who values his own time sends a signal before he ever opens his mouth. He communicates that his life has direction, momentum, and obligations that don't disappear on demand. His presence feels intentional. When time is given without structure, It stops feeling special. It stops being chosen and starts being expected. Availability without boundaries doesn't deepen connection. It erases the edge that makes connection feel alive. Availability without structure isn't devotion, it's self-erasure. There's another difference most men never learn to recognize, and it quietly decides whether attraction strengthens or decays. Appreciation is grounded. Validation seeking is unstable. Appreciation says, I see you. Validation seeking says, please see me. When a man appreciates a woman from a place of inner stability, it feels effortless and masculine. But when he begins looking to her to regulate how he feels, something shifts. His words may sound the same, but the energy behind them changes completely. This is where men start losing ground without realizing it. They compliment too often. They explain how much she means to them too early. They open emotionally before polarity and trust are established. They look for reactions, reassurance, smiles, confirmation that they matter. From the male perspective, this feels like honesty and vulnerability. From the female nervous system, it reads as emotional dependence. Unconsciously, a question forms. Why does he need me to hold him emotionally? And once that question appears, desire begins to slip. This becomes especially visible after intimacy. Many men talk too much in those moments. They confess fears. They reveal attachment. They explain how invested they already are, hoping closeness will lock the bond in place. But closeness without structure doesn't deepen attraction. It dissolves it, because attraction depends on polarity, and polarity collapses the moment a man looks to a woman to stabilize his emotional state. She doesn't feel cherished. She feels responsible, and responsibility suffocates desire. This is why women often say, I don't know what changed, I just feel different. They aren't being evasive. They genuinely can't explain it because it didn't happen logically. It happened energetically. The moment you need her approval to feel secure, she starts pulling away. Not because you cared too much, but because you stopped standing on your own emotional ground. Modern dating has made one mistake easier than ever to repeat: constant communication. Men believe frequent texting keeps connection alive, that staying in touch proves interest, that quick replies prevent competition. But from a woman's perspective, excessive communication doesn't feel like closeness. It feels like pressure. When a man is always available, always checking in, always responding immediately, the signal isn't attraction, it's fixation. It tells her that nothing else in his life competes for his attention, and when nothing competes, perceived value drops. Silence itself isn't what creates attraction. Direction is. A man with purpose doesn't disappear to manipulate. He moves forward because his life has momentum. And that momentum is what keeps desire alive long after words stop working. A man who doesn't text nonstop isn't automatically mysterious. More often, he's simply anchored somewhere else. The issue is never communication itself. It's what that communication reveals. The same dynamic shows up with premature commitment. Many men rush to offer loyalty early, believing it proves sincerity. They define the relationship before attraction has had time to stabilize. They lock themselves in too fast. To a woman, that doesn't read as strength. It reads as urgency. It signals that you're investing certainty before she's earned it, choosing emotional safety over discernment. And safety without desire doesn't feel comforting. It feels suffocating. Women aren't intimidated by men who are quiet. They're unsettled by men who have nothing going on when they're quiet. A man who communicates with intention, who reaches out to set plans and create real connection, carries weight. His words don't chase approval. They land with purpose. Commitment, when given too early, loses its leverage. It stops representing value and starts signaling fear of loss. That's why commitment only works when it grows out of shared experience, mutual respect, and sustained polarity. Commitment has power only when it's earned, not when it's offered prematurely. There is one form of power that consistently changes a woman's behavior, and most men never develop it. It isn't dominance, it isn't control, and it's not emotional pressure. Real power is the ability to walk away without falling apart, not as a threat, not as a strategy, but as a genuine internal reality. The moment a man knows he cannot leave, everything about him shifts. Even if he hides it, his tone tightens, his decisions soften, his boundaries blur, his actions stop coming from choice and start coming from fear. Women sense this immediately. When a woman realizes a man is emotionally, sexually, or psychologically trapped, she begins to test him. Not out of cruelty, but because her nervous system is searching for stability. She pushes limits, she pulls back, she challenges boundaries. And when the man fails those tests, not by becoming aggressive or controlling, but by staying when he should leave, attraction erodes. Staying without self-respect doesn't feel safe. It feels unstable. This is the paradox most men never grasp. A woman doesn't feel secure when you cling. She feels secure when you could walk away and choose not to. That's where desire lives. A man who can leave doesn't negotiate his value. He doesn't over-explain himself. He doesn't chase validation. His presence carries weight because it's optional. This is why men who genuinely have the ability to walk away often experience something unexpected. Women behave differently around them. Respect increases. Attraction steadies. Not because the man is cold or detached, but because he's free. She doesn't fall in love because you stay no matter what. She falls in love because you stay by choice, knowing you could leave at any time. Desire itself isn't the problem. Losing control because of it is. A man doesn't lose attraction because he wants a woman. He loses it the moment that desire starts steering his decisions. When lust takes control, priorities shift quietly. Purpose gets delayed. Boundaries loosen. Focus narrows. Without realizing it, the woman moves from being part of his life to becoming the center of it. Women feel this shift immediately, not because they analyze it, but because the man's energy no longer feels anchored. His attention grows heavy. His presence begins to lean. What once felt exciting now feels consuming. This is where many men misread the situation. They believe closeness will deepen desire. They assume more intimacy will stabilize attraction. But desire without self-mastery does the opposite. It pulls a man off his axis. When a woman senses that she has become more important than a man's direction, his purpose, or his inner discipline, respect fades, not out of malice, but because attraction depends on orientation. She needs to feel that he's moving forward with or without her, that his life has momentum that doesn't depend on her validation. This is why men who chase pleasure often lose it, while men who govern themselves tend to attract it. The man who can experience desire without being ruled by it becomes unpredictable in the right way, grounded, solid, centered. He doesn't suppress himself or force restraint. He simply isn't owned by his impulses, and that quiet mastery registers as strength. A man who controls his desire doesn't become distant. He becomes magnetic, because self-control isn't denial. It's authority over self, and authority is what attraction ultimately responds to. If you've stayed with this message, then you already sense the truth most men spend years avoiding. Women don't stop loving you because you weren't good enough. They stop because somewhere along the way, you surrendered your position. You gave more than was grounded. You stayed when stepping back would have preserved respect. You confused effort with value, closeness with attraction, attachment with strength. This isn't an attack on women, and it's not permission to become cold or emotionally closed. It's an invitation to see women clearly. Women don't fall in love with sacrifice. They fall in love with stability, direction, and a man who stands firmly on his own ground. A man whose presence is chosen, not begged for. A man who doesn't disappear into a relationship, but brings a full life into it. Love was never meant to cost you your center. It was never meant to strip you of self-respect. And it was never meant to turn you into someone afraid of being left. The men women will never love are not weak men. They are men who abandon themselves in the hope of being chosen. And once you stop abandoning yourself just to be wanted, the entire dynamic shifts. If this landed uncomfortably close, that wasn't coincidence. It was awareness breaking through. That tension you felt is clarity replacing illusion. When you're ready to become the kind of man women respect without explanation or persuasion, stay connected here. If a moment in this message made you pause, speak on it. And if you know someone giving himself away in the name of love and losing himself because of it, pass this along, not to judge him, but to help him wake up.